Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Making Data Simple, listeners, thank you. You made it back again, and I greatly appreciate it. As always, I just like to jump right in because I'm always time crunched, whatever. I want to get to the good stuff, and I have good stuff today as usual. I've got Richmond Alake, who's with me. And look, Richmond, I'm going to call him Rich. He's given me permission because now I'm in the inner friend circle. So Rich is an AI ML practitioner. Got an academic background in computer vision, robotics, and machine learning. He's worked in computer software and development in machine learning roles since 2016. He's also taught AI ML data classes and written over 200 technical articles with 1 million views. I am so grateful that he's found his way here because he's as passionate about technology as I am. And yes, we'll probably talk about some more AI, guys, but we'll talk about data. I'm a data guy. I think I'm sitting right in front of a data guy. So this is great for me. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And you can call me Rich, and I will call you AI Martin, as in, and we can definitely be very good friends in that term. But really, honestly, is I'm glad I found my way here to speak to your audience about AI, about data, and about how MongoDB actually fits within all the space. Talk to you about my journey as well.
I want to hear about all those things. And yes, we laugh. But if you're AI Martin, you know what that does to my inbox? I have like ADD to begin with, and let alone everything that's coming into my inbox is AI this, and I think it's all about me anyway. So that's the joke I have when I get and I do a pitch. So you're right on to it, man.
Love that.
All right, look, I know you're a developer advocate at MongoDB, but let's do this. Start with your background, and I do want to start with that journey that brought you to Mongo, and then also in the AI space. I also want to hear a little bit about your academic work that you've done.
Okay, well, I'll start with Mongo because I'm going to finish with Mongo. So back when I was in university, I was studying software engineering. Back then, which was, good Lord, I started in 2012, was my first year in university, or around that time. I got introduced to MongoDB when I was doing my internship over at General Electric. And I remember just being the odd one out in my university cohort, in my class, using this document-based database. And everyone just thought it was cool, including my lecturer. Well, that led me to teaching, becoming a teaching assistant for my lecturer back in university. Then I went into web development for a few years. Then I got bored. And I went back into university to get my master's in what we call AI today. And since then, I've worked as a computer vision engineer. I've worked as a machine learning architect. And today I get to work as a developer advocate within MongoDB, almost being cool again. I like to think I'm cool again, like I was in university. I'm still the cool kid amongst my cohort.
Back then is not that long for me, but you say, hey, I mean, you made a reference to say you said you took a class, now it's called AI. What was it called back then?
I took a class, my master's is in computer vision, machine learning, and space robotics.
I see.
So
and
it's easier to say AI.
Of course. What does it mean to be a developer advocate at MongoDB?
That's a very good question. Really what that means, and firstly, I want to caveat that with developer advocacy changes for a lot of places you go to. But I'm going to speak very specifically to MongoDB. What it really means is you are an individual within MongoDB that is overly obsessed with your customers. And that is the developers who are using MongoDB. And when I say obsessed, I mean you're thinking about how they're experiencing every single touch point of when they interact with anything related to MongoDB. So I communicate to developers and our customers in different formats. It could be webinars, it could be podcasts like these ones, it could be talking, having a conversation, and it could be articles. And I make sure with every single content, the person on the receiving end is getting the key information that they need. So that is, when you see a developer advocate in MongoDB, you know you're talking to someone that is putting you really top of mind.
You know how I know how passionate you are? I can tell you this. Where are you located?
I'm located on the outskirts of London in the UK.
What time is it? What time is
Well, right now it's 7:13 p.m.
it? This is on a Friday night, folks. You should be out having a cocktail or a pint, should you not, right now?
Do you know what's very interesting? The world of AI never sleeps. And for me, the best fun I can have, and not a lot of people have the privilege to say this, the best fun I can have is doing the stuff I'm doing right now.
I'm so passionate about what gets you up in the morning. What I mean, if you were to prioritize, I mean, give us a flavor.
Have you ever had something you're not good at? And
No, I'm good at everything. Sorry.
okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Then you can't really. you see, when this is why I call you AI Martin.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes. All right.
Well, the thing is, every day I get to wake up and I know that I will be challenged by what I'm facing, but I will be able to solve that challenge in a very interesting way. Every single day I am growing. I got into computing by mistake. In UK, when you start college is this limbo period before you, in between secondary school and university, is for 2 years. But when you start college, you have to choose 4 subjects. I went into the induction day and I was going in with the mind that I was going to choose chemistry, maths, and physics because I wanted to become an aerospace engineer.
Okay.
But you have to choose 4 subjects. And the person in front of me said, hey, Richmond, you're going to I have to put 4 subjects on my sheets of paper. What is your 4th subject? I was like, I don't know. The only thing in my mind I have right now is space. I am going to space, or I'm making the things that get to space.
Fantastic.
And he said, and I said, choose for me. And he said, well, why don't you just do computing? And the only reason he said that is because he was the computing teacher. So
of course,
it's all by chance. And I wasn't good at this, right? I wasn't good at what I do today. I wasn't good at programming. I used to avoid it like a plague when I was an intern in General Electric. My friends still tease me about it.
But you still took it.
Pardon?
You still selected it. You let him write that down, or you wrote it down based on his suggestion.
Exactly. I wrote it down based on his suggestion. But every day I get to come in and I get to show up and I get to be the best version of myself. It's fun.
I got a kind of a contentious question to ask you. This is what I do on MongoDB or database. If you can answer on behalf of Mongo or database, doesn't matter to me. I'm a database guy. And I can tell you why I'm a database guy, but I'm sure you're a database guy for similar reasons. A lot of people today would say, databases, those are commodities. Why do you even concern yourself with that? Everybody's got one. It's like buying a TV. They're everywhere. What's your answer or retort to that?
I've not gotten that question a lot, right?
No?
And maybe that's because I'm an AI guy within a data world, right? Within a database.
You're not a data guy in an AI. I'm probably a data guy in an AI world. You're an AI guy in a data world.
Data world, exactly. So the question I get is more not that database is a commodity. I get something else, which is, hey, tell me why AI is not snake oil, or tell me why the AI hype or the bubble is not going to burst. That's the question I get more.
All right. Well, you want me to ask that question? I can tell you do. So I'm going to ask you that question. Are we in the hype cycle? A lot of people believe we're in the AI hype cycle. Why wouldn't we be?
I'm going to be very biased because obviously my whole career is dependent on the hype cycle, or at least AI being very popular. Are we in a hype cycle? That's a good question. And the way I answer it is, it's hard to tell. From now on, it's always going to be harder to tell if we're in a hype cycle. And I'll tell you what I mean. AI moves at the speed of innovation. During the AI winters, what we had was periods of innovation and then stagnation. Then the hype dies down. But what we've noticed is those AI winters are getting smaller. And that's because the gap between the innovation checkpoints are literally getting more closer together. So what that means is, are we in a hype cycle? It's hard to tell because ChatGPT just came out 2 years ago. It feels like it's been here for ages. And now we're talking agentic. And maybe in another 2 years, agentic will die down, then another thing will happen. So it's hard to tell. That's the answer I tell folks.
Yeah, I would probably answer a little differently if you'd allow me to. Thank you for that answer. That's great. I absolutely think we're in a hype cycle, but there's a big but. I mean, because you go through these hype cycles, as we've seen with the market, NVIDIA, stocks overall lifted by, the interest in AI and the anticipation of what AI can bring. So absolutely a hype cycle. However, that doesn't mean that the hype isn't worth the return. Right now, I still think we're early on. If you talk to Gartner, over 90% of companies are exploring or piloting or in production phases of Gen AI. Over 20% have deployed in a production environment, but over 80% say that it's going to take at least 3 to 5 years to capture full value. So I think we're still very early on. Is it some hype? Sure. But man, I can tell you right now, and I've said this in previous podcasts, we talk about AI a lot. I use it every day. Every day I use an LLM every day to better my sentence structure, to write an email, to do some research, little silly everyday things that I am starting to become very dependent on. When I'm working with clients around digital care, or digital labor, I should say, customer care, or IT ops like Code Assistant, there's a ton of value here, man. So, I mean, it may be hype because there's always hype with new technology, but it's real. So beat me up. Tell me is there anything you disagree with my statement?
There is nothing I disagree with, right? Because what you said is absolutely correct. People are not going to reap the full value of AI now. Just from the capabilities of these models, there is so much work to be done. There is so much value to reap on the consumer end. So I get I'm privileged enough to see a lot of developers building Gen AI solutions every single day with MongoDB. So I understand some of the use cases or some of the pain points they're trying to solve. But yeah, there are still people today, or there are industries where digital transformation is a key initiative, right? Moving to the cloud is a big thing. It's still a big market, just migration to the cloud. And you could have said the whole hype of cloud happened around maybe 10 years ago, but that is still going on because there is still value to be found around that specific hype. The same thing is going to be for AI. But here is the key thing. The bubble will probably not burst. The people that are really at the top of this, the problem, or the top of the stack, you would say, they are throwing a lot of money and a lot of intelligent people at this problem. And they are very confident in saying, hey, we're going to get to AGI in a few years.
What do you think?
Let me give you an honest answer.
I was hoping for an honest answer. Well, go ahead.
Well, the thing is, I don't think about AGI, right? Because my job, and what I'm really obsessed about, like I said, is my customer. So as my developers are not thinking about AGI, they're thinking about AI today. So I think there is going to be different forms of intelligence that come out from all of the model providers over time, OpenAI, Cohere, and then they're going to get incrementally smarter and at some point exponentially smarter, right? What I do think is my job and is developers' job to be able to turn this intelligence into value for the wider society. So it's one thing if you have a AI or AGI, but what does that really mean to a consumer, to a user? One thing that we really focus over here at MongoDB is not when AGI is going to come. It's making sure that if it does come or when it does come, our developers our tools and our technology is readily prepared to make sure developer can actually reap and actually find and make this AGI useful. You were saying, hey, database is a commodity, right, at the beginning, and it's everywhere. Well,
I didn't say that. I was saying other people say that.
Other
I don't
people are
think it is
saying that.
that. But go ahead.
And to be honest, yeah, it is everywhere. And what we focus on is how we allow people to become very successful with data, with information. And what that means for MongoDB is we provide you the features to build all of these applications on, right? We're the data layer. We're the memory provider for your agentic system. We're the vector database for your RAG pipeline, right? We're the general purpose database for your AI application. And what that means is when you use MongoDB, you get all the features that allow you to be successful and build the applications that is ready to host AGI eventually. So yeah, data might be everywhere, but or databases might be everywhere, but modern databases optimized for AI workloads are not everywhere.
I think that's true. Is there some commodity pieces about it? Yeah, sure, because everybody's got to have a database. But find yourself in a situation where you don't have high availability or a database goes down or you get a security breach or whatever, and you'll see the difference between strong databases and weak databases. But we're here to talk about MongoDB today. So I'm going to dive in there. But before I do, there's an unfinished story here that you started with your academic where you went into AI and you had 3 other things on the list. How long did it take before you dropped the 3 others and you started doing all computer science, ML, and ultimately AI?
The way it works in the UK is in your first year, or the way it used to work back then, in the first year you did 4 subjects, in the second year you did 3. So the choice was made for me because I wasn't really that great at maths. So, and chemistry.
AI is all math, though.
Well,
I mean, it's statistics.
It's statistics. True, but you can actually be very good at machine learning. And when I say maths, I mean like really, really deep maths. I'm talking about inverse kinematics. And I still did maths because I went into space robotics in university. But I'm really talking about, in comparison to the rest of the subject, physics was more my stronger point, followed by computing, followed by maths and mechanics. I went into software engineering, and then you get into the realm of code, database systems, and all the good stuff with application development. 3 years after being a web developer, I decided I want to go to the next thing. AI was a logical step. And I was doing inverse kinematic, working out the free arm motion of rovers and doing some deep learning about convolutional neural networks and all the good stuff that today, I guess, we don't really get into. It's still fun.
What makes for an AI database? I'm sure you're going to tell me that MongoDB is an AI database. Well, tell me why.
That's a very good question. So not just an AI database, it's a database optimized for AI workloads. So it's like, I don't want to put the term AI database because then what does that even mean? An AI database, right? MongoDB is a database. You store data, you retrieve data, but it's optimized for AI workload. And what I mean is, today, we're able to search. You type in a query into ChatGPT and it's able to give you some information from one of the GPT models, whichever one you choose. That's using its parametric knowledge. With AI today, or AI application, there is a technique called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which essentially supplements your prompt with some relevant data and gives it to the model to give you a more relevant response. So that technique is called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG for short. How do you do RAG? There are different ways to do RAG, but one of the really popular way that's come off maybe the recent 4 years or so is by approaching RAG with vector embeddings. A vector embedding is a numerical representation of data. Its vectors have existed, vector data type have existed for a while. In computer vision, all the neural networks and all the images are converted into grids of pixels, which are basically arrays and which are just vectors, right? Then the convolutional neural network could conduct some pattern extraction. So we've been working with vectors for a very long time. But what we have now is the ability to actually turn an image or an audio into a numerical representation that can be stored in a database and then used to conduct different search mechanisms. So before we used to search with text, now we get to search with meaning. And that brings a whole dimension. And not all database can actually hold vector data. or are optimized to allow for that retrieval of vector data because they are massive.
Well, in my mind, you actually got three things you can do, sometimes in combination. First one is fine tuning, but then you're creating multiple models that can lead to a proliferation of models, which can get unruly. Then you have RAG. You're going to use data, and this is where less than 1% negligible data are in LLMs today. So to use a customer's capital, you got to get to their data, and to get to their data, you got to use something like a RAG methodology. The other option that at IBM here we've developed, it's called Instruct Lab, where you can change the model parameters itself. So it doesn't lead to the proliferation of models. It's in the same model, but very often you may want to do that and use RAG in conjunction. So you have both of it. But RAG is certainly popular, and it's very useful to use, to leverage a client's data. Is there any use cases that come to mind that you're working on around RAG that you would want to point out?
One thing, you touched a key point there, which is those three things, right? The last one you guys are working on in IBM is actually interesting, but fine-tuning is a way to actually get the model to do what you want. RAG is another way. And the reason why RAG is popular, which you pointed out, is because it's the most cost-effective way to getting the model to do what you want, right? RAG, you get a database, you pull information retrieval, typical stuff, right? Not typical, but you have to get the right database. With fine-tuning, you need data. You need to source some training data. And that could be costly in itself because you might not have the right data. Now you have to go and collect some data and then use the data to fine-tune the model to change some of the parameters, which again can be costly. So fine-tuning is some use cases. We see some customers conducting fine-tuning. But in most use cases, RAG is an effective technique to get the model to do what you want.
In any of these, you need to think about cost, whether it's cost of the actual LLM itself and GPUs you may need, or inferencing cost. There's limitations to RAG as well. I don't know if you want to talk about some of those or talk to some of the use cases as well.
Also about some of the use cases. The use cases to see MongoDB, we are in a very interesting advantage, a very well-positioned advantage with what's happening in AI today. So within the AI stack, we actually sit at the intersection of a lot of technology players within the stack. So we work with folks like LangChain, we work with Google, we work with AWS, we work with pretty much everyone that is relevant to AI today. And that's given us a very interesting perspective on the use case we encounter. But one that I'm working on that is very, I guess I can speak to, is the use case of automatic detection of fraudulent transaction. So you might know this, but banks get fined several millions of dollars every year for just handling transactions from countries that they should not be handling transactions from. This is a massive problem. One use case is actually using an agentic system where you have a bunch of policies from different countries within your database, within MongoDB, that have the vector embeddings of the policies as well. So now you can start searching by meaning. And you also have the metadata, and this is going to answer the question of RAG is RAG in its form is not just all you need, right? It's not it's not going to solve all your problems. So in this use case, we have the policies from different countries, and you have it with the metadata and the embedding data. The metadata could be the policy name, the policy recipients, and who created a policy, and the contents of the policy itself. While the vector is a representation, a numeric representation of the semantics within the policy. So when a transaction comes in, I'm nerding out. You got me started.
Keep going.
I'm going to have to nerd out. So when the transaction comes in, what this system can do is actually start to search by different parameters, one of them being meaning, and also metadata, and actually retrieve certain policy that it can use to check if it's violated. Then you can use another model that is used to check on any conflict of any policies or any rules. So you use that to check if an incoming transaction is basically violating a certain policy. So that's a very interesting use case, because you can apply that use case to different industries. Because insurance, you have to deal with policies. When you're in supply chains, you have to deal with policies. When you're in different industry, HR, you have to deal with employee policy, different policies across, especially if you're a large organization like IBM, you have to deal with different policies in different countries for dealing with different employees or customers. So that's why I bring up that use case. But you're right, RAG is not going to solve all your problems. There are different things that you need to be thinking about when you're building RAG. And one thing that we don't want you to think about is the database, because MongoDB solves that for you. The next thing is there are different techniques that through experimentation, through our exposure to a lot of use cases, we have we have a knowledge set of ways to approach efficient RAG development. And we share that through articles, we share that through folks like me, or speaking to our customers directly.
What is your very simple set of best practices within like a minute or two that you would tell our listeners around RAG and leveraging RAG with your AI solution?
You've given me an almost impossible task, but I would say
top three. It could be anything.
Let me say this, right? I will say this. The direction of the implementation steps of these systems, when you want to think about how to improve them, think about the way you approach optimization is in the reverse of how you implemented it. What I mean is that, and that's just in a sentence, right? And to anyone building a RAG pipeline, what I'm saying is you want to optimize your RAG pipeline. The easiest way is for you to start at the end of the pipeline. So what I mean is you start tuning the prompts. You make your prompts better. Very easy. Anyone could do that. You can get a 5-year-old to do that. Make that sentence better to get the model to do what you want. That's easy, cost effective, time effective. In most cases, prompt engineering is a whole field in itself, right? There's a lot of different job descriptions paying ridiculous amount of money just for prompt engineers.
No offense to the prompt engineering. I seem to figure it out. But I say, please, before the prompt, like I'm talking with somebody, I cannot help it. It's the Midwest person in me, I guess. I'm in New York, I work in New York, but I'm from the Midwest. So,
oh, that's good.
And you know what's funny? As a catch up for those that listen to the podcast, I had Meg Gallagher on from Maven AGI on the podcast, and she was laughing at me, and I got a text from her, and she said, "I was thinking of you today, and I used please before my prompt." I said, yes, I told you it happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where do you see the role of database or vector databases evolving alongside the advancements in AI over the next few years?
That's a very good question. So the form factor of evolution, the form factor of what we call AI today is evolving. Right. So we started with chatbots. Now we have chatbots that know about our data. Now we have this agentic system that has an LLM and it's able to do stuff on our behalf. Right. And this is the current form factor that we're at right now. Incoming form factors will be conversational AI, where you get to speak to it. Right. I don't think that's going to stick around. I think some people will use it. Some people will just stick to text. But generally, where does a database like MongoDB that acts as the database optimized for AI workload, and in certain cases, your vector database, when I'm speaking to our customers building this agentic systems, which are going to be the popular form factor for 2025, when I'm speaking to them, I'm telling them to think about memory. One of the key indicators of a very intelligent human is the ability to remember things, to recall.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that, but keep going.
Me and you both. But it's the ability to recall, right? So when we get into this agentic feature, that same principle applies to agentic systems. The most performant, successful, and reliable agentic systems are the ones that have good recall and good knowledge store. And that's how important memory and the database is within this agentic feature. So I tell customers, MongoDB is the memory provider for your agentic system, and they get it. So if I tell you, AI Martin, think about rose, you'll probably think about the color red. And that's something we call associative memory, right? You're able to recall different objects or memories because you're associating them. You can model that in a database as a knowledge graph. And MongoDB has a way for you to be able to query knowledge graphs. Now your agentic system can begin to think like humans do, but obviously in a much faster way. And that's how important it is.
Let me ask you a tough question though. There are many other databases that would support vector database. Why does Mongo do it better?
That's a very good question because I actually answered that in a live stream yesterday, and I get the privileged position of answering this to customers every day. MongoDB is one, very importantly, built for scale. And what I mean by that is, as you start to scale your AI workload, MongoDB becomes performant. And when I mean performance, I'm talking about latency, right? And for those who are tuning in or who don't know, latency is I ask my database for some information, how quickly do I get it back? Now, every database could store information and give you information, but how quickly can you get me that information back? And this is how important it is. When ChatGPT came out, I think we were all okay waiting for about 10, 20 seconds for the response to come back on the chat interface. But I don't think people will be that patient today, right? Because now the latency is much quicker. MongoDB, we prioritize latency. We optimize. We optimize different factors that essentially point to a future where the time for you to store your data and retrieve the data, it's negligible. That's where we're aiming to. So we released a feature called quantization today, which reduces the memory footprint of your vector data, right? So this is top of mind for us. And that's the difference. If you allow me to nerd out.
I'm here for
also,
you.
And you would know of this data format, right? JSON.
Yeah.
Every developers, regardless of what time and age, knows of the data format JSON. And MongoDB and the way we store data is based on this JSON-like format. It's called BSON, which is binary JSON. And why I'm bringing that up is because if you're familiar with the AI stack, which involves people like Google, LangChain, MongoDB, and your application and all of your frameworks, one of the key formats of data exchange between the stack, regardless of programming languages, is JSON. So imagine how easy it is to work with a database that is already in tune with other layers of your stack.
I got a couple more questions for you. Thank you for all of this. Is there anything else on the Mongo or AI side?
Right, from my view, things have moved very quickly in the world of AI and in the world in general. I think we started this year with a set of capabilities from AI applications that were, okay, that's impressive. And now we're finishing the year with the prediction that an AI system will be able to create $1 billion company. So this is how quickly things have moved. So
eventually it'll be a company of one, given what you're able to do with AI. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is the new prediction, right? It's like there's going to be one AI, or you just need one person with a powerful AI tool to create a $1 billion company. And that's where we're at now. We didn't start the year with that prediction. That would have been crazy if you said that in January. So what I tell my customers, and this is all the listeners or the developers or whoever takes the time, this long of a time to listen to me, what I tell them is AI moves at the speed of innovation. When I'm speaking to database customers, your time to market and your ability to iteratively develop is one of your competitive advantage. Don't waste it worrying about your database. You don't want to become a database administrator in a world of AI engineers. No offense to database administrators, but
Yeah, you just alienated database. All good.
but you
They'd
get what I'm
rather be playing golfing anyway. They'd rather be playing golf anyway, so it doesn't
But
matter.
look, AI engineers don't want to start configuring the database configuration to make it more efficient. MongoDB says, hey, the way you build your application is the way you store data. The way you see data in your application is the way you store data. And guess what? We're going to handle all the optimization aspects of your data. So go do what you do best. Become a productive developer.
I don't know if you read Yuval Noah Harari. He's got a new book out, Nexus, and I haven't read the whole thing yet, but he's just talking about how fast this AI revolution is moving. Usually humans have time to adjust, but it's like off to the next thing before we've even adjusted to the first thing. So it's hard to predict how this is going to have an impact on our lives as we go forward.
And
I don't know.
remember what I said, the checkpoints in between this AI winters or when the bubble burst is getting smaller. It's so moving so quick. And that's why I say, hey, maybe it's hype, but the bubble's not going to burst.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's here to stay. So we got to learn how to deal with it.
We got to learn to say please and thank yous.
See, what Meg said to me, which I think is going to hold true, is she said, when the robots take over, they're going to come to me and they're going to say, I remember you saying please and thank you.
Well,
So I'm going to be in good shape. I don't know about you, Rich, but I'm in good shape.
But not if we're changing the parameters of those models every time we send a query.
Now,
Remember.
they're going to change them back, and they're going to know that Al guy was always nice to me. That's right. So I am getting ahead of everybody. When the machines take over, they're going to love me. That's how it is, man. So I see you as a continuous learner. So that leads me to my next question, which is, what advice would you give to businesses or professionals who want to stay ahead of the curve in leveraging AI or vector databases or databases in general? I mean, just education in general. We talk about how fast it's moving. How do you stay ahead and not get behind and get lost in everything?
Accept the fact that you are going to become a student.
That you must become a student, actually.
You must, as in, I remember when I was in university, it was just constant learning, constant homework. And that's what the field is. And if you want to stay ahead, you want to have a competitive advantage as someone within the space, you have to really be excited to wake up every day knowing that you're going to be a better version of yourself, at least more knowledgeable. But if you're running a business, it can be really difficult because you have to run a business and stay on top and be a student and be profitable. I would say, this is my advice, choose where you get your information wisely. So the news articles you're reading, the podcasts you're listening to, you should be listening to podcasts like this, right? Making data simple. And that's the key thing, right? Because most of this is people like to sound very smart by making very simple things complex. But the actual trick is you sound very smart by making complex things simple.
You know, I'm with you on continuous learning. You know, outside of disease or some unfortunate event, my dad always told me, look, nobody can take knowledge away from you. I try to learn as much as humanly possible. But I will say, man, there's a lot to learn. There's just not enough hours in the day. You got any tips and tricks? I mean, how do you learn fast?
Teach. Because you can't be ambiguous if you're going to turn up in a lecture the next day teaching a group of students. You can't be ambiguous if your job is to literally teach developers and customers about MongoDB.
To that end, I think it does apply because going back to my old man, he would also tell me too, his trick, if he was to get out in front of a student group or any group, like if you're doing a pitch, just know more than they do. So if that's your objective, you're going to be able to answer any questions and you'll be in good shape. Yeah. You may not always get there. There's always somebody out there that knows a ton, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. Aspire to gain the knowledge to the nth degree. Where can listeners go to learn more about your work, insights on AI, find you, etc.?
So the work we do on MongoDB lives on most of our platforms. You go to mongodb.com. We have a lot of resources that educates AI developers or data practitioners on how to build with MongoDB. In terms of where to find me, I'm usually on LinkedIn. posting about the things I'm doing, the things I'm seeing, the things I'm saying as well. I tried Twitter. I've not got my hand of it yet, or X. So, but really, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
All right, we'll do it. Thank you so much, Rich, for being here and sharing your insights with us. Your excitement of AI is certainly contagious. At 8:00 now on a Friday night, are you going to go get a pint after this or what?
Well, I've got a date with 2 white papers that I'm writing on AI
on a Friday night.
Well,
wow, that's commitment. That's commitment. Fantastic.
I've written the white paper, but remember when I said you can't be ambiguous when you're trying to teach? Yeah. It turns out it's a little bit too long, so I've got to shorten it.
Well, you can use AI for that. Just say, hey, take my white paper, cut it in half.
You know what? See, in that respect, I'm a bit old school, right? I guess I'm just you're right. You could just say, hey, take out some stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. But I'm gonna go through the words, and because when I go through it, some of them I could convert them into LinkedIn post, or maybe I said, oh, maybe this can become like an article on its own. So,
well, this is why I call it augmented AI, because in that case, I would do it, but then I'd look back at it. I'd have both of them on my screen, literally. Yeah. And then I'll be like, all right, they pulled something else out that I've got to have it. I start pulling it back in, and it usually helps. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I guess you could spend more time trying to reconcile both versions, but it tends to help me quite a bit, particularly if you prompt it right, to your earlier comment. All right, well, thank you so much for being here. And again, I love your energy. Contagious, man. Contagious.
Thanks a lot for having me, and it's been great talking to your audience as well.
Fantastic. Listeners, thank you for tuning in yet again. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com, and we will get back to you. We'll get the listeners on that you want to hear about, like my good friend Rich here. Until next time, we'll see you later.